So maybe I will call myself Christian genius or Christian billionaire genius Buck Sexton because I kind of like the sound of that. Although only one of those three things is true. You can probably all guess which one. But that's what Kanye West has been telling people he might change his name to. He's also saying he might run for president in, I think, 2020 or 2024. I'm actually not sure which one it is, but I like the sound of Christian billionaire genius Buck Sexton. That would be kind of fun. At least gives me something to aspire to. I could earn the name after calling myself the name down the line. I also just wanted to point out something that you're not going to hear because I feel like I have to update you on some of the latest on this situation with all these different people who are coming forward to speak about impeachment. These different ambassadors. Well, here's one named a career guy named George Kent. Now Kent he said some stuff that was not helpful for the Trump side of things, right? He said that the president's personal attorney sought to manipulate U.S. policy on Ukraine and oust foreign ambassador Marie Yovanovitch. Guess what? The president can send whoever he wants to do whatever he wants on foreign policy. The president gets to do foreign policy. All these bureaucrats you don't like. Remember, bureaucrats don't like President Trump's foreign policy on Ukraine, or they're concerned about what he's going to do about it. Meanwhile, thanks to President Trump, they actually have missiles to stop the Russian tanks from running over their brothers in trench warfare in eastern Ukraine. Right? So, who's the good guy here? The bureaucrats, the stuffy bureaucrats. We're working so hard on this issue, please. I know these people. I worked the kind of people that do all the grandstanding about how important they are and how much we matter. U.S. foreign policy matters. The self-importance of the State Department is just. I'm going to be honest with you, it's just vomit-inducing. Ugh. It's always... The State Department could be a fifth of its current size. And if you just had good people who worked hard and got things done, everything would be fine. Okay? It could be 20% of its current size, and the country would not be in dire straits. We might have like a few less unnecessary, agricultural training programs in countries that are not thankful for the help we give them. Anyway, George Kent, he's this guy who is a lifelong bureaucrat for the State Department. Here's what he had to say in testimony. This is, now the testimony is coming out. Question: at any time was there discussion of perceived conflicts of interest, either on the part of the Vice President, Biden, or his son? Answer: you're talking about a period leading up to his visit in December 2015? Well, Hunter Biden, he was first reported that he was on the board in mid-2014. Correct. And the vice president's involvement with Ukraine is pretty significant at that point in time, and it remained until he, through 2016. Correct? Yes. And the question was, were there any discussions of a perceived conflict of interest on the part of either Hunter Biden or the vice president? The first time I was in Ukraine as acting deputy chief of mission in the period of mid-January to mid-February 2015, subsequent to me going into the Deputy Prosecutor General on February 3rd and demanding who took the bribe and how much it was to shut the case down against Zlochevsky, I became aware that Hunter Biden was on the board. I did not know that at the time. And when I was on a call with somebody on the vice president's staff, and I cannot recall who it was, just briefing on what was happening in Ukraine, I raised my concerns that I had heard that Hunter Biden was on the board of a company owned by somebody that the U.S. government had spent money trying to get tens of millions of dollars back, and that could create the perception of a conflict of interest. Oh, you don't say. Hunter Biden? Conflict of interest? Daddy running Ukraine foreign policy? This State Department guy's putting all the puzzle pieces together, isn't he? Question: and what did the person on the other end of the line tell you? Remember, this is a State Department person talking about raising to the vice president's staff the problem of Hunter Biden. Here's what was said. The message that I recall hearing back was that the vice president's son, Beau, was dying of cancer, and there was no further bandwidth to deal with family-related issues at that time. Was that pretty much the end of it? That was the end of that conversation. Okay, that was in mid-2015. That would have been in February because, to the best of my recollection, Beau Biden died that spring. I then returned to Ukraine in August of 2015, and I believe he passed before then. So the only time that conversation could have happened is in the narrow window between January and February 2015. And subsequent to that, did you ever think through with other State Department officials about whether we should try to get Hunter Biden to leave the board, or maybe we should get the vice president to transition his key responsibilities on Ukraine to some other U.S. official? No, it's easy in a conference room like this to have a considered discussion about things. In Ukraine at that time, we had a war with Russia occupation. We had an embassy staff going from 150 to 250 Americans, from no special forces U.S. government soldiers to close to 70 in country. Our assistance went from 130 million to nearly $1 billion, and we were working nearly nonstop. Ambassador Piat, I can tell you from working for him, would wake up between 4:50 and 5:01 a.m. because that's when I got the first email from him, and went to bed because that's when I blah, blah, blah. Okay, yeah. Nonstop, 20 hours a day, 7 days a week, right? No one's ever worked as hard in the history of the universe as these particular diplomats do. I was in war zones with the federal government too, folks. I know what really goes on. So, yeah, all these State Department guys, 20 hours a day, 7 days a week. Sure. Anyway, the real reason I'm reading this transcript portion to you is just so we're all clear. The media's, I don't think there's anything wrong with Hunter Biden being on the board of the company, is just feigned stupidity. Nobody's that dumb. Everybody knows that what Hunter Biden did was gross. And gross enough that there would be justification to look into whether there was actual corruption. Abuse of power, you could say, by Joe Biden on behalf of his son in these circumstances. You could at least justify an investigation of it. But instead, what we have is an entire media apparatus that is anti-Trump, just willing to look really dumb because it's easier to look dumb than have to explain this stuff to the American people. They'd rather pretend. And speaking of looking dumb, I mean, I have said this before. I do believe, and there's some competition for sure. But I think that Senator Mazie Hirono is, based on her public utterances, the dumbest elected official in the United States Congress. I think that's probably there's a strong case to be made that she said the dumbest things of anybody in Congress. This is just one man's opinion. I tend to be right. Here is what she says, though, about this whole situation. Play 17, please.
The whistleblower's complaint, which first brought to light that the president engaged in this kind of what it turns out to be quid pro quo, has been collaborated by Taylor, by others. And so here's the Republicans, they just can't deal with the substance of what the president did. So they're doing all kinds of things to muddy the waters.
They can't deal with the substance, so they want to muddy the waters. We've dealt with the substance every day for weeks now. Substance isn't changing. We know what the substance is. We know what's said on the phone call. Perceptions of policy from bureaucrats from the period of time in question, I don't care. It doesn't matter. They're not telling us about anything that we need to know from them, especially because there's this irony that Trump's policy on Ukraine was better for Ukraine than Obama's, and all these people who work together. And there's all this connection, by the way. They think now that Scaramella may have traveled, I believe, with Biden to Ukraine. I think I saw that in the Washington Examiner. I mean, this was like a cabal of Obama-era officials that had one view of what should be going on in Ukraine. And there's also this question about CrowdStrike and whether, why was CrowdStrike, which is Ukrainian-funded, the only group that ever looked into the DNC server, and the FBI never actually examined the servers? Is that a crazy thing to ask? Can I get an answer about this? They're going to ask a private entity that's Ukrainian-funded. I mean, that's why Trump brought that up on the call. And maybe there's nothing to it, but you see, with Democrats, they think if they just shout loud enough and they're shrill and nasty enough, they can prevent people from just doing fact-finding. How about we find out what happened? Wouldn't that be a good thing to do? We had to sit here and be lectured by crazy libs for over 2 years about how, the special counsel, this is all by the book. This is all legitimate. No, it's all crap. The whole thing was garbage. And I was saying it all along. I was right all along. It was a conspiracy to take down a president. And if there was anything that they could have produced, trust me, they would have. because they went through everybody. Nobody got the benefit of the doubt in that process. Process crimes were thrown at people left and right, turned up the heat on people, did real financial and psychological damage to lower-level staffers in the White House who had to just get lawyers and deal with sleepless nights because they had to go in for, with Mueller and his team, knowing that if they, lied about what they had for breakfast yesterday, they're going to get thrown in prison. It's just crazy. Oh, but we can't find out about anything Ukraine-related. That would be terrible. Let's also understand, even if, let's say that there was an announcement about, this has gotten skipped over by everybody here. Let's just say that with the quid pro quo, the quid pro quo. Let's just say for a second that it was followed through with, or it really did happen, meaning that Zelensky announced that there was an investigation into Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, that whole situation. So let's assume that actually was going on. That would be like a 2-day news cycle. The announcement of an investigation. You know what all the Democrats would say? There's nothing there. It's a partisan investigation. Who cares? They're not going to show up with anything. And if they didn't get anything from the investigation, that would be it. The way that people are talking about this on the left, it's like Donald Trump said, hey, we're going to arrange for like Hunter Biden to travel to Ukraine, and can you guys throw him in prison and like never let him get trial? That's not what happened. The way that the hysteria around this, to invest foreign interference by investigating your opponent, even if that had happened, okay, even if that had gone through, does anyone really think that Democrats would have stopped supporting Joe Biden? It's a joke, right? I mean, like they're going to all of a sudden be like, oh, well, because they're investigating this Ukraine situation, I guess Trump wins the election. And now you might say, oh, but what about those independents? And that's where it'll really matter. Okay, but guess what? Politics is rough business, and Donald Trump has gone through a criminal proceeding meant to take him down that was based on lies for 2 years, and now is going through a political proceeding meant to destroy his presidency, and yet they still haven't been able to stop him. So maybe this is going through this gauntlet is, I think, forging him as an even stronger candidate in this whole process, or a stronger president, somebody who is just unflappable. I mean, you cannot keep this guy down. It's really remarkable. So, just some additional thoughts on this. We'll have more bureaucrats, more people are going to come out from the State Department, and there'll be targeted leaks of different information. But it's all telling us. This is why Mazie Hirono's thing, I think, is such garbage, because the substance, we already know what the substance is. They just keep trying to say, hey, but do you see this thing that happened that he said on the, yeah, we know. I don't care. I'm not going to care. They're not going to make me care by repeating it every day, which seems to be the plan. Although, as I said, they're going to switch. They're going to switch into something else, because this isn't going to cut it. It's just not enough. It's not damaging enough, this narrative that they've concocted. It's not going to get it done.
If you held a vote today in the House, would you vote to impeach this president?
Well, that question I won't answer, because I do have to keep an open mind and an appearance of an open mind. Mm-hmm. I have said that the evidence is pretty damning.
Oh, yeah, he's keeping an open mind, all right. Nadler there. No, he wouldn't vote to impeach the president. Oh, of course not. No way. No way he would do that. I mean, come on. This is one of the things that bothers me so much about Democrats. Like, they'll assume that we're all so stupid. Yeah, sure. He's still waiting to see that evidence come in before he makes up his mind. Same thing with Pelosi and Schiff and all the rest. And they're still waiting for the evidence. This is all based on the facts. This isn't a political narrative that's driving their perception of the facts. It really is. It really is stunning to watch them. Just the dishonesty and the disingenuousness of all of this. And I would like to believe that the American people understand really what's going on. Enough, I have to say, enough America, because there are a lot of it, 40 to 45% of the country, I really believe this, wouldn't care if Donald Trump were being impeached based on evidence that they knew to be fraudulent. They would not, that wouldn't bother them. If they knew that somebody had fabricated, I can't really walk you through how this analogy would work, but I'm just saying, if They don't care what it is. 40 to 45% of the country, of the voting public, all Democrats, obviously, they just want Trump gone. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what the explanation. The explanations and the process and all this is just trying to hope to get Republican defectors and create enough support among independents that the Democrats have a shot at regaining more power in the next election. But, I mean, the Democrats, this is all, they're not sitting, none of the leftists, none of the psychopaths who were protesting the event I went to last night, I mean, none of these people are sitting around saying, well, I really don't know if Donald Trump should be impeached. We need to let the process play out. Yeah, sure. Remember? That was what they were saying about Mueller until Mueller didn't give them what they wanted. And then it was, Mueller, I'm going to move right to impeachment right away. These people are nuts. By the way, Senator John Kennedy, he had some thoughts on what Pelosi is doing here, really what the precedent is that Nancy Pelosi is setting. Producer Mark, would you play clip 5, please?
She is going to elevate partisan impeachment to the new normal so that henceforth, when we have a new president, and we will have a Democratic president someday, many Republicans are going to feel obligated to impeach the Democratic president because they don't agree with his or her politics. And I don't think that's right. I just don't think that's right.
It's a little bit like the nullification that can happen in states when if you just get enough private interest groups together or just interest groups who want to recall somebody, recall elections. Well, Total Recall, the original, was actually a pretty good watchable movie. The remake was terrible, which made me sad. You know why it made me sad, Producer Mark?
Why, Buck?
Because Jessica Biel was in it, I believe, before she married Justin Timberlake. So she was still on the market at that time. So there was hope.
And now you have no hope anymore?
No.
I mean, once she marries somebody like Timberlake, come on.
I mean,
Even I think he's dreamy.
Fair point.
Yeah.
I mean, he was even good in The Social Network, which was pretty impressive. So anyway, I think that recall elections, for example, can be a way where, I mean, if someone's doing a horrible, I understand why it exists, but, it's a little bit like jury nullification. Jury nullification is a real thing. It's also an extreme thing. It's also should be a last resort, and impeaching a president should be a last resort as well. And anyone who is telling you that what's going on right now with President Trump is a last resort is a liar. It's just not. They've been wanting to do this all along. It's all pretextual. It's all based on some excuse that they'll find in order to make it seem like they haven't been trying to do this all along. But it is just lies, my friends. It is just lies. And you know it, and I know it. But Democrats have gotten very, very comfortable with that. So I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. All right, let's check in on the crazy Democrat candidates, folks. I feel like we haven't done much of that. We haven't done any of it really today. I've just been getting an impeachment and telling you about, psycho Antifa wannabes. They're just jealous that Buck pulled off the tux so well. What can I say? 007 Buck, baby. That's how we roll. We have, by the way, if you haven't, you guys got to follow me on Instagram. I need more Team Buck following on Instagram. I post photos from this stuff. I post some on Facebook too, but Instagram now is where the photos usually go. So if you want to see the event last night, you should definitely follow me. Just Buck Sexton on Instagram. It's very easy. All right, Elizabeth Warren. Let's start with Elizabeth Warren. Although, do we have crazy Bernie? Bernie Sanders getting crazier and crazier. Where is this here? Yeah, I think we might have Bernie here somewhere. We do have Warren for sure. Talking about Elizabeth Warren she just wants to take the wealth from the rich people and just wants to pay for everything else for everybody else. Here's her telling us all that rich people are, and remember, she's rich. She's millionaire rich. She's not billionaire rich. And millionaire rich is like you still have to think about things, I mean, I'd love to be millionaire rich first someday. I've never experienced this. But billionaire rich, although I am, as producer Mark will tell you, perhaps going to legally change my name to Christian Billionaire Genius Buck. And maybe that should, just Christian Billionaire Genius Buck. We can make that the show title today. I'll just
Yeah, sure.
You know what I
But if
mean?
you're a billionaire, I'm not getting paid enough.
That's true. Yeah.
Mm.
Well, sorry, we'll have to up the salary. But it is technically fake news that I'm a Christian billionaire genius. But Elizabeth Warren is out there saying that rich people are bad. Play 15, producer Mark.
When you see a government that works great for those with money and is not working so well for much of anyone else, that is corruption, pure and simple, and we need to call it out for what it is.
When you see a government that works for people with money and is not working so well for much of anyone else, that is corruption, pure and simple. What does that mean? You know, that's my favorite question on the show. What does that mean? The government the government has a almost $1 trillion welfare budget, right? That spends almost $1 trillion on welfare, depending on how you calculate welfare. I think it's like $800 billion a year. Where exactly is that? I mean, the government, in what way, works for rich people? I'm not saying that there's not ways the system is rigged. It's definitely true. Financial system, it's not fair. There's stuff that goes on that's bad and dirty. But I would like a little more specifics than just the class warfare, envy, I don't like the rich people stuff from Elizabeth Warren. I think that we could ask for a little bit more specificity than she's giving us here. Oh, that's right. Wealth tax time, baby. Now, as a conservative, I'm going to tell you this. Wealth tax wouldn't affect me, so woohoo, right, producer Mark? Oh, wealth tax, they're going to get up in our bank accounts? I don't think so. We don't have to worry about that.
Good. No new taxes for us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Boom. Robin Hood, baby. Take from the rich, give to the poor. What? Oh, important. What is the best version, live action or animated, Robin Hood of all time? There's only one answer to this question, but let's see if you get it. The best version of Robin Hood, the tale of all time.
You got to go with the animated one, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Ding, ding, ding. Producer Mark gets it done. The Disney animated.
I mean, nothing's better than most of the Disney animated movies.
Remember, that's like, is that the sheriff from Nottingham that's singing that little tune?
I think so. It's been a while since I've watched it.
Yeah. Anyway, it's great. If your kids haven't seen it, that's one of the best. That's an underrated Disney movie. Because here's the thing. The Robin Hood Prince of Thieves with Kevin Costner, why can everyone else have a British accent, but he can't? He's like, yes, I am Robin Hood, and I speak in a monotone because I'm Kevin Costner. He doesn't have a British accent in the movie.
Yeah.
It's like they took some guy from, central Illinois and put him in, 13th century England or whatever Robin
It'd be
Hood's
like if
supposed to be.
James Bond spoke with an American accent.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, I'm James Bond, baby.
Yeah.
Here I am. Look at my tux.
New Yorker James Bond.
New Yorker James Bond. I like hot dogs, football, tuxedos, the Mets. Clearly that James Bond would like the Mets.
What is that supposed to mean, Buck?
Yeah, we know what's up. We know. There's certain New Yorkers like the Yankees and certain New Yorkers like the Mets. That's all I'm going to tell you. It's the thing.
I'm a Mets fan, Buck.
I know he is. We like to poke producer Mark a little bit. So anyway, the Robin Hood Prince of Thieves is bad. Men in Tights is reasonably entertaining. It's actually Dave Chappelle back in the day was in Robin Hood Men in Tights. All right, sorry, I got totally sidetracked from Elizabeth Warren. Wealth tax. There we go. Back on track now. So the thing about a wealth tax, as a conservative, I understand that the wealth tax is problematic in a lot of ways. But before I get into why the wealth tax is problematic, let me say that I always tell you when I get a little status tingle, I get a little thrill up the leg of statism, or something, or statism is thrilling up my leg, whatever, you understand. I always know when I'm veering into that, like when they ban smoking in places, I'm like, I know it's big government, but it stinks for all of you who like to smoke in the public places. And I know that should be private places to be able, but they regulate it and they say can't do it, and I like it, even though I know that technically it's not a free market, liberal, or I should say liberty based is when liberal. Buck had a long night. Buck, his voice is a little bit scratchy, and my brain's not foggy though. I'm not having like a Not having like a Biden moment here or anything. See, we should call it a Biden moment, when you forget where you are, when you're just sort of blabbering incoherently about something. So I like the idea that at least a wealth tax, because the super rich libs, and wealth tax is bad. People can cut this and be like, Buck, you said you like a wealth tax. No, I don't like a wealth tax, but there are some parts of it that I kind of like, because the problem you have with a lot of libs is that they love to talk about how much they want to pay higher taxes. They're all fine with it. And you look at somebody like John Kerry when he was running for president, I think back in 2004. Right. Think about that. John Kerry was a Democrat nominee for president. Wow. That guy. Yes, I'm really boring, and I talk like this all the time, and I've been fortunate to marry two incredibly wealthy women, one after the other, and John Kerry. Man, my John Kerry's actually kind of good. I haven't pulled that one out in a while. I felt like John Kerry was in the room. So, some of you are like, boo, false. John Kerry, when he was running for president, I think he had something like $7 million in income from investments and things. So, not from labor, but just from investment income. And I think he paid 10 or 12 or 15%, because there were all these incentives and all this stuff. It was structured. He paid a shockingly low tax rate on the $7 million. And keep in mind, they're not touching any of the principal of his overall wealth. So, of course, for people like that, they're like, yeah, 50% tax rate. Whatever. Their bills are already paid, because of super rich people don't have to care about the tax rate all that much. The tax rate on income, my friends, they don't have to care about, because their expenses are already all covered, and they are covered by what they can accumulate just from investment income, essentially. Even though right now, bank accounts, you don't get anything. I mean, I will say, from Bannon last night, one of the best things that he said at the speech, and he went into how the government policy, and this is where this is true, government policy has, because of quantitative easing and this enormous Fed balance sheet and the acquisition of all this cash by the federal government to use and then distribute to printing money. I mean, they don't actually print it, but to put money out in the marketplace. What it means is that's why you can't get any percentage on your savings that's worth a damn anymore. You can't, there were times when you could get, and some of you listening know this because you got it, and I've never been alive with it, but you would get, 7, even I think at one point it went as high. Well, I don't know. I don't want to give you a number because I'll be wrong, but I know 7, 8, 9% on a savings account you could get back at one point. Now, there was higher inflation, obviously, but still. Now you can't get any money on that stuff, and that means that the money goes into the stock market in particular. Inflated people who have assets, those assets get inflated. They do well, but people who are trying to save money, pay for essentials, they are, you're transferring money from people who are at the lower end of the scale, who are just trying to get ahead and build some economic security, to people who are at the very top of the scale. That's a real economic phenomenon. Bannon was talking about it last night, and that's something that we should not forget. Elizabeth Warren, look, some Democrats, some of the stuff they talk about is real. There is a growing gap between rich and poor in this country. I mean, there are some phenomena that they discuss that we need to discuss too, because it's real, but we just have better ideas about how to fix it. But a wealth tax affects the people that like to walk around being, oh, I don't care how high my tax, but everybody should pay higher taxes. Oh, really? All of a sudden, the really rich people start, and of course the super rich libs out there, start to say, oh, no, you can't take a percentage of my overall assets. Because that starts to feel like they're feeling that. It feels like they're feeling it. That's the way you could say it. It feels like they take note of it. And here's Senator Elizabeth Warren doing her full Marxist class warfare routine. Play clip 16, please.
And here's the thing. You may have heard some billionaires on TV recently crying about that 2-cent wealth tax. Aww. But we ask the top 1/10 of 1% to pitch in 2 cents on their fortunes. We can invest in an entire generation.
2-cent wealth tax? I'm assuming she means
Aww.
I'm assuming she means 2%. what exactly is her? Yeah. Annual on 2%. Yeah, that's what it. Of course, 2 cents. Why she says it's 2%? She's calling it 2 cent. That's why I don't. I guess she's trying to be clever with 2% wealth tax. 2% on every dollar of net worth above $50 million. What this would do is over time, it would shrink very large fortunes. That is true, it would. And people who right now are very haughty about how they don't care what their tax rate is, they would start to care. All of a sudden, there would be a change. There would be a shift in their thinking. And so if for no other reason than that, I kind of like it. I kind of like it because now I do not support a wealth tax, but I like the aspect of it where it shows some of the hypocrisy. It rattles up a little bit the people that love to talk about, I wish I could pay more in taxes. First of all, those people they can send as much money as they want to the federal government. If you want to give the federal government every dollar you have, you can do that. And I'm sure there's some leftists who would say that's the patriotic thing to do. Give every dollar you have to the government so that the Democrats can redistribute it to illegal aliens, right? I mean, they're great with that. They think it's a fantastic idea. But the wealth tax Elizabeth Warren is bringing up that's where Wall Street is all of a sudden starting to turn on her. This is where people are seeing things differently about Elizabeth Warren than they had in the past. She's every bit as radical as Bernie. She just comes across as less radical in her demeanor. But it's really just a style thing. It's not a substance thing. She has all of Bernie's radicalism and then some. And we should not forget that as we continue to think about which Democrat do we really want to have squaring off against President Trump? That's an interesting question at this point. I don't have a clear answer in mind other than I feel like I'm quite confident that Bernie Sanders would lose. But I don't know. Maybe Biden is more likely to lose than Sanders.
I think it's important for the nation to raise the minimum wage of $15 an hour over the next several years.
Is that possible, though?
It is possible. You know, what happened was when Barack and I were in office, what happened was we pushed it, and a number of states came along and responded to that push. And there's a number of states now there's $15 minimum wage that's phased in. And the argument it's going to cost jobs is not true. Just take a look at corporate profits out there. The idea they can't pay $15 an hour is just not accurate. And look, it's all about giving people some dignity. There has to be the ability to be able to have health care, education, be able to live a decent life. Nobody should be working 40 hours a week and being paid what's below the poverty level. It's just not right in my view.
Now, I know this is a very popular issue, left and right. People like minimum wage. They like raising minimum wage. And we never seem to get past this. It's a little bit like the intractable nature of the pay gap between men and women, which is not what people say it is. The pay gap is a lie. We have to keep coming back to this. No, women do not make 77 cents on the dollar for doing the same work at the same level, the same stuff. That's not true. It's just not. But people like to say it. And on minimum wage, I know this is where, because I feel that too. I mean, I want people to get well paid. I mean, I look, anybody who shows up and does an honest job for an honest wage deserves respect, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. And I think that, one of the things about America that makes us Americans is that if you show up and you're doing an honest job for an honest wage, it's every bit as respectable as any other job anyone's doing for a ton of money or famous or whatever it may be. And that is part of our American ethos. That is part of our American culture. But I also understand economics a little bit. Better than Bernie Sanders and better than Joe Biden, that's for sure. And I know that the studies they've done on this are very clear. Minimum wage, when you raise it, some people do make more money. Some people's hours are cut back. Some people's jobs are cut. That's just the price is the price. I always say this. The central planners pretend that's not the case. The price is the price. The market sets the price. Paying somebody is the price for their labor. Right? And there are factors that go into that are not just, we think this would be a good amount of money for you to make. And it's also the case that it makes it harder for people to get into the workforce. It increases automation. I mean, there are all these things that happen. You raise minimum wage and people feel good about it. And there are some people who will be, in that margin of, okay, the company can pay a little bit more, or it's good PR for them, so they'll pass on the cost to consumers. There's all these different, but ultimately, you're just the government is mandating that the money's going from one place and into another. That's what's happening here. There's not some magic money tree that they can just shake and the money comes down for all the people and everything is fine. But everyone this is, Republicans lose on this issue. People like the minimum wage to be higher. No one wants to hear from the nerdy economists who actually crunch the numbers. Will tell you that it does not do what people say it will do. There are costs and there are drawbacks, but I know I sound like Buck the Grinch